is a teleological argument from the Greek telos, meaning purpose or design. Anytime you learn Paley's watch argument, you looked at a clock and saw the mechanism, or if you look at a mouse strap and see the continuation of sequences and the synchronicity of sequences, you put the synchronized action and the continuous action, you arrive at a designer, and it was called the teleological argument, the argument from design. The third was an argument which is still, I think, the most powerful, that a moral argument for the existence of God. Moral realities only exist if God exists. Moral realities do exist, therefore God exists. That's the way the argument goes. Moral categories only exist if God exists. Moral categories do exist, therefore God exists. And the moral argument is the most difficult for the atheist to shake off, because how does an amoral universe, through non-moral processes, end up with a moral framework? How do we think primordial slime cannot properly engender why it is wrong to torture babies? Especially since evolution is built on the notion of the destruction of the weaker. In other words, we would never even be here if it weren't for the fact that nature is red in tooth and claw. So the moral argument still sort of hangs like a shadow that we cannot get rid of. May I suggest to you, that's why books like the Da Vinci Code are written, because they want to take the moral attack on Jesus. They've never been able to do anything else to hit at him. If they really wanted to morally attack somebody, why don't they go and look for the polygamy of some self-styled prophets? Why don't they go to some writings in the Hindu scriptures where Krishna is shown to be this playboy? Why don't they go after that? No, they've got to find some such thing, that Jesus ended up with Mary Magdalene. And, all the books that are written on Mary Magdalene, she had to have been superhuman to have ended up in all the places that she has on the books. But the point is, they want to hit at the moral reality of Jesus Christ. And then there's a more confusing one. But I want to take you through Dallas Willard's 3-stage argument and then get to some smoother areas. I promise you this will smoothen out a bit. First stage of the argument is this. They are hard to understand as it's worded, but I will explain it. However, concrete physical reality is sectioned. No matter how you break it down, the result will always be a state of affairs which owes its being to something other than itself. No matter how you break down physical concrete reality, it will never have the reason for its existence in itself. It will only point you to something else as the cause of its being. There has been not one bit of evidence in this world which will demonstrate to you that there is a physical quantity existent which actually is uncaused and eternal. There isn't. And once the Big Bang Theory came into being, it tells you that the universe actually had a beginning. So the Big Bang Theory actually implies that the universe hasn't eternally existed. So the physical realities, however sectioned, never explain their own existence. They have to go to something outside of themselves. Which means at least this much, that if there's anything in this world that would explain its own existence, it would have to be something that's non-physical. It's a very safe inference, because there's no physical concrete reality that explains its own existence. Stage 1. Stage 2 is this. No matter where you find intelligibility and specified complexity, you will always see intelligence behind it. What do I mean by that? You will never ever be convinced by anybody's argument that a dictionary developed because of an explosion in a printing press. Why is that? Because of the nature of the intelligibility of language. If you were to walk onto a totally new planet and you were to see 10 million stones arranged in a perfect triangle, you may deduce that over 15 billion years, something happened on the surface of that planet to make a perfect triangle over these millions of stones. You may be able to deduce that. But if your name is Andrew, and you take 10 more steps and you see a piece of paper and it says, "Hello, Andrew, I've been waiting for you. What took you so long?" One line, and you will never conclude in 15 billion years that happened because of some demographic shift or some geological shift on the surface of that planet. Why is it? Because there is an intelligibility to what you have just seen. Now, I want you to follow a very important point that I'm making. This is not an argument from design, which is the teleological argument. You look at a dictionary and you say to yourself, somebody had to write it. You look at a mousetrap and say somebody had to build it. You look at a jumbo jet and say it didn't happen because of a tornado in a junkyard. Somebody had to put this together. You don't assume such things because there's a component factor, a sequential factor, and the time factor. All of them are woven in. That's an argument from design. My question is this. This is not the argument from design I'm presenting, as Dallas Willard suggests. This is an argument to design, that prior to any one of this coming into being, there had to be the raw material from which such design was even possible. You can look at a baby and say this is an argument from consummation of a husband and a wife bring this baby into this world. That's an argument from effect. The question is, why is it possible that by the combination of what the husband and the wife bring in that consummate union, it is even possible for a life to come into being? That is the argument to design. You can't get a dictionary if there is no alphabet. You can't recognize a sequence unless you know the order of the alphabet. You cannot even use language without an understanding of the laws of the grammar and the alphabet. All of them pre-exist in some form to pull them all together to make comprehension possible. And so when we talk of things like love and sexuality and procreation and empiricism and logic and all of that, there is a pre-configuring making all of this possible. It is the argument to design. Naturalism does not give us that. We've got a huge gap in just saying this is the way it was. That kind of argument would never work in a court of law. So stage number one, no matter how you section physical concrete reality, you will always find a state of affairs where it doesn't explain its own existence. When you see intelligibility, you always assume intelligence. And the third stage is a very simple stage, and that stage is the profound stage over which I want to spend the rest of my time. The course of human events, historical, social, and individual. The course of human events, historical, social, and individual, within the context of extra-naturalism. I've not yet said supernaturalism, of extra-naturalism, and of a plausible cosmic intellectualism. It is plausible to talk of a mind, and by the way, that's why people even like Einstein didn't get off clearly on theism, but they did start to posit a mind. Einstein may have been pantheistic. It was about quantum theory that Einstein made the comment, God does not play dice. He said there's not totally random. There's a mind. Many scientists of that ilk will posit some kind of mind. They're not sure what it means. They're not ready to get off at a theistic framework a la Christianity. But they say you cannot explain a physical universe alone because no physical quantity explains its own existence. You cannot just say intelligibility happens this way in its effect because there has to be the predisposing component factor to bring about intelligibility. And then you study the history of humanity and the social scene of humanity and the struggle of humanity, and you begin to see where the Christian message stands tall.